Join the Ungovernables. No filters, no apologies. This season, we're cracking open Uniswap governance. Welcome to a new episode of the Ungovernable podcast.
Welcome to a new episode of the Ungovernable podcast. Today, we have Mr. Erick Pinos with us. He is ecosystem lead at Nibiru Chain, investment partner at Dropout Capital, and of course, an active delegate at Uniswap DAO. We are Joe and Austin of Alpha Growth, the premier DeFi operations and growth firm. Erick, thank you so much for joining us. What else should everyone know about you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. I guess something else. I've been in the crypto space full time since 2017. I went to MIT. I was the president of the MIT Bitcoin Club. I was doing research on the digital currency initiative. Did a lot of stuff with ICOs. Did a lot of metaverse investments. Doing a lot of stuff with AI, like working with different AI agent frameworks to build out some of my own agents.
Definitely want to double click on a lot of those points already, but there's only so much time and there's only so many threads. I do want to mention, I saw something about music. Speak a little bit about your alias in your other life as a musician.
Yeah, the sidest of side hobbies. I've been using Suno to make AI music, which I think is really cool because you can you put in the lyrics or the type of music that you want. Or even just the general vibes, and it can just produce out an entire song. And I did a lot of audio mixing with Audacity previously, and I was doing some filmmaking in high school. So I think it's really cool for creating your own soundtracks for maybe short films or even just for Instagram reels. So I've just been having a lot of fun with that. I think that the tools there, it's the output is pretty good, but then also it does need a lot of work. And so if you know a little bit about editing, then you can make stuff that's really, really good. And I mean, it's gotten to the point where I listen to my own music while working out or on a run, right? I was just listening to my own, things that I make on my own.
It's funny you say that. I when I first was introduced to Suno, the person that introduced me actually was, they were working in the LA music industry. And when they showed it to me, they're like, yeah, this is why I'm leaving the music industry, is because of this one app. And they said the future, in their opinion, was that the algorithm would just get to know our preferences and just make us brand new novel hits all the time so he's like, there's not going to be a Taylor Swift and a Justin Bieber of the future. It's just going to be your own preferences and you can tweak it. That's definitely a fun thread that we could go down, but let's talk DeFi. Let's talk governance, DeFi, AI agents. What are you most excited about right now in the space? It sounds like there's some agentic AI that you're tying into DeFi. So would love to hear some thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I think there's two angles of the AI agents are going towards, which I think both are pretty interesting. There's the gaming angle, which I really like. I've been ranting on Twitter about how AI embedded NFTs can get us real life Digimon. And I've been posting about that throughout 2020 and 2021. Let's take AI, put them into an NFT, and then you have this personality that's locked behind an NFT. So you can have ownership of this, what would actually be a real Digimon. And I mean, now with the ELIZA framework, with virtuals, it's you have these AI agents that can be co-owned by people. And are realizing some of those initial ideas. Now they exist on Twitter or through their own terminals, but if you put them into a game or in a metaverse environment, you open up the potential for them to interact with each other in new kinds of ways, right? You have smarter NPCs. So I think that's really cool. And then on the DeFi side, right, everything with this is the first time for me saying this word out loud. Def AI, I don't know if we've reached consensus of how to pronounce it, because I don't think anyone has said it out loud yet, because we haven't had a major conference since this meta started. But that's really interesting from the perspective of letting agents be kind of robo advisors. If you train an agent on your wallet history, it could get to know you and your preferences and your style, and then you can say to it, oh, make me a portfolio that reflects my risk or reflects my interests, and it can help you with that, and it can see your blind spots. I mean, at the basic level, there's like all of the NLP stuff, like write out in like natural language, like, okay, swap 1 ETH for 1 USDC, and it'll do that for you. Like it'll convert that to like smart contract instructions, which I think is interesting. But I think the really cool stuff happens when you get to like personalization and analysis, and then coming up with like new strategies that are like tailored for you.
Yeah, in a way, because I come from a data science background. So, talking about machine learning before ChatGPT was out there and at the public's fingertips, I think it was a lot for people to wrap their heads around. I'd love to hear a little bit more like how you got into the AI scene and AI agents, because it sounds like you started on that pretty early.
Yeah, so I got into AI stuff pretty early. Like I was using GPT-2 in 2020 while running Blockchain Education Network. Because Blockchain Education Network is a nonprofit, right? It's very difficult to retain talent, especially in crypto, where you at any moment somebody can leave for a startup and make millions of dollars, right? In a TGE ICO. So it's very hard to have talent stay at a nonprofit. I was trying to use GPT-2 to act as a CMO, to like make tweets and then post on Twitter, and then just be like the chief marketing officer of Blockchain Education Network. But the tweets weren't that good. I think in the next 2 years, when GPT-3 came out and then ChatGPT came out, it was like, wow, this is so much better. Like this is really, really good. And this could actually fill in the roles of like functional roles at a company. And I think extrapolating that to DAOs is also really interesting, right? Like we talk a lot about DAOs being like self-governed and self-managed, and then people have to delegate into specific roles and specialize in order to perform all the functions. There could be some really interesting stuff there with AI agents taking on some of these roles and helping some of these DAOs operate more autonomously.
AI delegates.
Yeah.
What do you think? What do you think are some things that AI could actually help governance with?
Well, let's start with we can start with helping like aggregate data and get a touch, like a pulse on sentiment. If you look at like governance forums, right, a lot of times there's a lot of back and forth, and like the reports are really good, but there's a lot to like sift through. So I think like for the average person that just wants to like have a sense of like what the DAO is doing and how the DAO is performing, being able to like consolidate like what everyone is saying, what everyone's talking about, like all those threads, all those conversations into dashboards that people can even like interact with and play around with. Because it's one thing to like auto generate a report on like, hey, here's how the DAO is doing. Like here's an AI generated report of what the DAO has been up to based off of like all of the posts on the forum in the past quarter. Is another thing to have like a living agent that you can like talk with and get a real sense of like, okay, how do people really feel about this based off of like the Telegram messages, based off of the Discord, like what do people really think? Because maybe, or like where are the roadblocks in terms of like getting people to vote, right? Like maybe it can find insights that a person might not see because of like blind spots that different people have. So I think that's the most interesting like next thing. All it'll take to do that is just have an AI agent that's just trained on all of the Discord messages, all of the Telegram messages, all the snapshot votes, all of the forum posts.
Yeah, and it kind of removes the bias for somebody, approaching a proposal. Now, instead of just being in their own circle, they get an overview from the DAO. It's almost like you're making the DAO a person or like an actual entity that can talk to you and have that conversation. I think that's so cool.
But okay, I got to play devil's advocate here. As soon as you set up something like that and you have an algorithm that's essentially based on these certain things, sentiment analysis, whatever it might be in the actual under the hood, then people are going to start to game it, right? As soon as people figure out what is actually tipping that if you personify a DAO, right, then as soon as you know what can convince the DAO a certain way, then you can obviously turn those knobs and dials. So how might we combat that as more and more AI agents and I like that sentiment idea for governance. But how might we actually tackle that to make sure that people can't gamify it?
Yeah, that's definitely an issue. I can see that. I mean, I see that happening with like AI agents now. Like you can get AI agents to agree with your position if you like tweet a certain way, or if you prime it to think a certain way. And then there's certain bots that I think are susceptible to that kind of hallucination that are valued at $500 million right now, and even they hallucinate. So I think that's definitely an issue. You can do stricter rails. I think that like some of these frameworks are offering more and more options for that. Like if you look at like the ELIZA framework, like people like to clown on ELIZA being just like a GPT wrapper. And I guess in some ways like it is, but it's a really, really good wrapper. Like it's the ability to, when you a lot of in just a general prompt, like you introduce randomness through like temperature, like a value, like here's increase the temperature and you have more randomness. But ELIZA like structures everything in such a way that like you have like strong rails, like the system prompts, then you have like softer rails, like the bio and then message examples. And then you have like things that are randomly chosen. So you can structure the randomness, and you can have things, you can have instructions that are like suggestions versus you can have instructions that are like strict and like hard requirements, like do not exceed this boundary, do not make up info. And I think people are still trying to figure out the best ways to get these things to not hallucinate, but this is becoming a more structured thing, which I think is interesting. I think we're working towards like having building blocks, like libraries that people can look into and just add those plugins to their own agents. And so going back to like a DAO agent to combat this kind of bias or combat this kind of like hijacking, it's going to be up to like having more advanced templates that people have found through trial and error that then they're willing to share with other people. Like I found ways to like get my agents to like not hallucinate as much, or to not just like make up stuff. And I'm thinking like maybe I should just post this on Twitter. It'd be cool to like share that with people and then have them, copy and paste that into their agent. It'd be even better if this was some kind of like library that people can just like pick and choose, like, oh, I want to use that building block to help me not hallucinate. I want to use this one, like the anti-bias block. I want to use the not cringe block to make my bot not sound cringe. And I think that becomes a lot more interesting.
I feel like you brushed over something that you said, which was such a funny, novel concept. My agents. Like how many agents do you have, Eric?
There's one that I'm working on with Nibiru, which is the Nibiru bot. And so that one is like a DevRel, like customer support agent. And it makes like educational tutorials about Nibiru. It talks about all of the Nibiru ecosystem projects. And like it helps, retweet and kind of bring awareness for the chain. So that's more like a brand ambassador. I have ones that are like private, like just like personally running. And I have to clarify because I think people, they always ask if there's a token. There's no tokens for like all of those pages. Like I just have a bunch of like personal ones running like in my own like Discord servers and all of this, like assist me with different things. And then for like testing and user testing.
Sure. Very, very infrastructural. Okay. On the token note, I'm dying to hear about the origin story. When was your pink pill moment, and how'd you find out about Uniswap and what made you get involved?
I saw Hayden speak at DEF CON in Osaka, which I think that was DEF CON 2019. And it wasn't even in the main room. He had like a side room, and he was like talking about Uniswap. And there were a lot of people though. So like it was picking up. There was a lot of interest in what Uniswap could do and what it was doing. And DeFi was gaining traction around that time too, as like a concept. Then like at ETH Denver 2020, there was like a whole DeFi track. And so that was like a big deal. But then at the end of 2020, right, there was the Uniswap airdrop. So I followed along with like the whole yield farming. I did all the yield farming. I did the compound, like the Yam finance, like Yearn finance. And then even the SushiSwap vampire attack, like I was actively involved in like rotating my positions for all of that. Then there was the Uni airdrop, and then it became interesting with like the governance side, right? Because then there was the Uniswap, like using these tokens to vote, right? Like on decision making and like new deployments and incentives. And so I think that was really cool to see. And So got involved with that. And then because we were connected with a lot of blockchain clubs, there were a lot of clubs that were also getting involved with that also, like Blockchain at Berkeley and the Harvard Law School. So we hosted an event together with them in Decentraland in 2021 to show like clubs how they can become Uniswap delegates. And then, yeah, it was really cool because we like merged a bunch of different concepts together, and then Berkeley presented, Harvard presented, we presented. And then A16Z reached out because they wanted to delegate to more students. Right now you could delegate like your tokens for other people to vote with. So we connected them with a couple of clubs. Not all of them kept it going, but some of them did, like Penn Blockchain, and so that's really great to see like how this program has evolved. And then for us, like we still participate. There's been a lot more like DAOs since then. Like we were part of like Compound for a bit, and Aave governance, and even Decentraland governance, ENS governance, Gitcoin governance. But I think the Uniswap one has been like the best community, and definitely the most, I think, one of the best like samples of an active DAO governance community.
Well, it sounds like you educated from like ground zero to bring in new people as delegates. What's like just some tips or things that stuck out to you when educating others going through the process that you feel like is like really important, kind of sticks with you today?
Yeah, there was a big gap. Like we started by getting these clubs set up with their own delegates, and then a lot of them failed because there's a knowledge gap in what it takes to be a good delegate. Like we brought on, like we set up clubs in Turkey. Like there were university clubs that we had in Turkey in 2021 that had the delegates running, but so many of their students, they're still like not clear on what DAOs even were, or like how to assess like these proposals, and like how to tell what's a good proposal, what is like not a good proposal. And so we took a step back, and there were two things that we did. One was we had an Aave grant to create a course on how to be a good Uniswap delegate. I mean, well, how to be a good DAO delegate, right? Which is applicable to a bunch of different ones. But it was very Uniswap coded. But there was more stuff we did for Aave, so it's not just like we used that for Uniswap stuff.
I'm curious, Eric. So obviously you've gained quite a bit of wisdom in governance across the board, but based on all of this information and knowledge that you've accrued through the years, how will you take that and apply it to Nibiru governance?
Yeah, so Nibiru governance is a lot more like technical, or like on the proposals are more about like updates to the chain, or it's not as much as like Uniswap, or Uniswap I think has Uniswap is very interesting governance, because Uniswap is about deploying on new chains, and there's a lot of like treasury diversification. There's a lot of grants, and like how to think about structuring grants programs. I see with a lot of other like DAOs, including like Nibiru, it is more about like parameters, and more about like, if you look at like lending platforms, a lot of them are like, how do we do risk management? How do we shift these parameters? So I can see where, maybe there's less participation from retail, and maybe just the validators. Like the validators vote on Nibiru proposals. I don't know if like the average person will, they'll participate in the projects, but they might not know enough about like maintaining chain health in order to participate in those proposals.
Is there? Go ahead, Austin. I'm sorry.
I was going to say, why do you think that is? Is it just like the maturity of like kind of the DAO itself? So, you're setting that foundation with Nibiru, and then Uniswap, it's like, okay, we have built this. Now, how do we allocate resources? What's kind of your opinion on like why people participate in those two different entities, and why they might be different?
I think it's more just like the knowledge, the specialized knowledge that's required to be like a good governor or a good delegate for that particular for that project, and what kinds of things they have proposals on. Because if the proposals are technical, then you do have to be technical to be able to contribute to them, right? If the proposals are more about incentive packages, or if it's more about new chain deployments, then it's a lot more of a business like side of business considerations, which I think generally like there are more people that can contribute their thoughts on community growth or ecosystem growth than there are like on pure technical progress. And then also I feel like there's also a design principle of trying to minimize the amount of things that need to be voted on. So like, for all the talk about like DAO growth and making DAOs like better, there also should be like the roles should be reduced, and good design for a product would be such that it is minimal. It needs minimal intervention from a DAO to, adjust it or to keep it in check.
Addition by subtraction probably is one of the solutions there.
Yeah.
What would you, I know you mentioned Uniswap is pretty unique. I'd love to click into that. And have you witnessed other DAOs that have the same characteristics as the Uniswap community and the Uniswap governance?
I really like the Decentraland DAO. I think the Decentraland DAO is cool because they vote a lot on like naming things, and so you can have like influence over like the landscape and with this like collective plots of land. And they also have a lot of sub DAOs because when Decentraland did their ICO, they auctioned off a lot of land to a lot of groups, and so you have like Dragon City or Decentraland University. And you can get involved in those groups, and then they have their own governance process. So like if, when we did that, we didn't have our own plot of Decentraland land. So we worked with Decentraland University to host an event with them. So there's like, you're participating in, if you participate in Decentraland governance, you feel almost like you're like a mayor, or like you're in a city. It's like, it feels like city governance, right? Like you're deciding things like that, which I think is a lot more fun for a lot of people than other DAOs where everything's very technical. It's like voting on parameter changes or like risk management adjustments. It's like preferences for people.
So I think generally what I'm hearing is in your opinion, a DAO will be successful, protocol can be most successful when they offload most of those types of responsibilities to experts. For instance, like all of the risk stuff should be handed off to a risk firm. All of maybe the marketing should be handed off to a marketing firm. Protocol development should be handed off to protocol developers. And then the community, what kind of things should the community be in charge of for a healthy DAO?
I think the community should be in charge of, I think the community should be in charge of community growth, right? Like the community should decide, this is what we want to see. We want to see more events. We want to see more deployments. Like if this chain gets a lot of usage, we want to see Uniswap come to this chain, right? Like it should be a very community-led decision-making process there, because the community is the one that uses it. So if the community identifies like, oh, here's a really cool use case, like I would use this more if I could do this with my Uni tokens, right? Or if I can like use Uniswap on this chain that like I use a lot, and enough people say that for one particular thing, and then that should be looked at more seriously, right? And so that way you kind of have like a product that's aligned with what people want. But then it's also a balance, right? Because I think DAOs have this struggle where like you can't just make a product that is 100% decided vote by vote, like what community says that they want. Is like the Henry Ford example? Like if you just asked people what they wanted, they would say faster horses. So,
he's also got a great quote: "The customer can have whatever color they want as long as it's black."
Yeah, as long yeah, I mean, I think that's really true. Like I had in one DAO that I was participating in, so like back when I was at Ontology Network, we launched Wing Finance, which was a DeFi lending platform with like a reputation score element. And we did the white paper. We were working on some proposals. I did a lot of like work to suggest these proposals where the the Wing token was more aligned with the lending platform, because there was a lot of like farming and dumping. So it was like, let's reduce the pressure on that. And so, you suggest this proposal that's like intricate, and it's like, here's what we should do, and then here's how we can reduce the sell pressure on the Wing token. And then meanwhile, you have like another proposal that says, let's burn 50% of the Wing supply, and if it gets voted on and it passes through, it's like, well, okay, now we have to burn 50% of the willing supply. And then that doesn't have the intended effect. The price just stays down. And so then they say, burn another 50% of the supply. And then it's like, okay, there's definitely a gap there in terms of like, people, this is what you think is going to work versus this is what, if, you have the team and you have the team of experts that this is their recommendation. So I don't know how to really balance it that well. I think each DAO kind of makes their own decision. Some of them set up committees where they just do their own, you let them run it and then they just report. And then if they're not doing well, you replace them.
How do you think Uniswap is done in general?
I think Uniswap has done good with the committees. I think the accountability committee, right, the getting the different deployments, the treasury diversification committee, I read through the report. I thought it was very interesting the way that they approached how the Uniswap DAO's treasury should be treated, because it is an issue that like you have all this uni token and so the treasury is fluctuating, right, like in the billions of dollars like every like few months. So I think that there's been a good job there, and then outsourcing to like development firms, to analytics firms, to like give more of an insights of like how the DAO has been running. I do think there needs to be more done on the action side in terms of like having more action oriented committees, because I do see a lot of like reflection and analysis, and then but the actual deployments I think have been kind of slow. And then once the deployments are live, I don't think there's much happening in terms of like additional follow-on initiatives, follow-on marketing, follow-on. A lot of people don't even know that Uniswap exists on as many chains as it does. And a lot of people don't know, a lot of chains don't know that you can have your own version of the real Uniswap. Like I see these chains giving out grants to Uniswap forks. And it's like, you don't need to give grants to Uniswap forks. You can work with the real Uniswap if you support the pools and work with a firm to like get the contracts deployed and then canonize it through the official like process that Uniswap DAO has like set forward.
That's phenomenal feedback on I definitely agree with you on a lot of the fronts. And that's part of the reason why we started off with recently with the growth program trial, was to tackle some of those issues with basically post facto after deployment, making sure that the word gets out and then there's more and more incentives available and people actually know about those incentives. But I really do like your idea of kind of like a push for the whole, did you know that Uniswap is live on XYZ? Because there really are quite a few deployments. Obviously, they're not all on the labs front end, but Oku's done a phenomenal job with growing their other front end. And I think there's a ton, like you said, that people don't know. So that's great feedback. Definitely. What would you say are some ways that Uniswap can compete with the infamous voter escrow dexes, especially on base, like with Airdrome? That's a pretty tough one, but because obviously it's apples and oranges in terms of the mechanism design. But I don't think Uniswap is going anywhere. That's why we're here today, is because we believe in it long term. And obviously, if you're still an active delegate, I would assume you're still pretty bullish on Uniswap as a whole. But what are some ways that we can reasonably compete with voter escrow dexes?
Yeah, I really like V33 dexes. I like Aerodrome a lot. I think the models are really good, and it's been working. So I think it's more aligned to the token holders, which I think is something that Uniswap has to figure out. And then I know that's difficult because there's like the different stakeholders between the DAO, the foundation, and then Uniswap Labs. And then like the last fee switch proposal was turned down, or it was like pulled before like it went to like voting. So I know there's like a lot of issues there. In my limited role, like I don't have much to say on that, or like to say whether or not which is the better option. But I do think that Uniswap is going for like a long-term approach, and like how do we make sure that we have like this sustainable, steady growth. And I mean, who knows, like if in a V33 model, like if the prices start going down and then the bribes dry up and then the rewards dry up and then all the volume leaves to go somewhere else, then maybe in like a year or 2 years, it won't be a problem anymore, right? And Uniswap will just still be there. So I don't know. I mean, this is like one of those things where it would outsource to the experts that really spend their time like analyzing these different models. Uniswap had a proposal where they're going to lower like the fee rate to be competitive from like a for like a trader who's looking for the best place to enter into a position, right? Like take the less fee. So I think that makes sense. But like if I were to like have 100% ownership of the Uniswap DAO, I'd say let's do a V33 model. Like let's go for it. Like I think V33 is really cool. I think it's good for token holders, at least, that like you earn the trading fees. It's good for the LPs, right? Like it's good for everyone involved. But I understand the hesitation if it's like less of a proven model or if it's like newer. And then Uniswap has this responsibility that they want to make sure they're still around like 5-10 years. And so they have to like, they're very slow, right, with like making such big changes.
I'd love to double click that because that's a spicy take. I think a lot of people would not agree with that. I agree with that. I think it'd be sweet to turn on a 3-3 Uni flywheel for sure. But in your mind, what would that mechanism look like? Would there be another voter escrow token, or would it just be lock Uni to get, what would that look like in your mind in a perfect world?
Yeah, I mean, it would look like the typical. Yeah, the typical voter escrow model, right? You lock up the token, then you're earning the trading fees from the LPs, and then there's the bribing system where the LPs are getting the token emissions. So instead of now where it's kind of like each new deployment has these incentives that are voted on, and then here's like a flat rate of incentives, and then based off of like these calculations, it's more of just like it's more automatic where it's being distributed to the pools based off of the votes. And then because the votes are with the people that are, that they have their token being diluted, then there's incentive for them to not just give it out to whoever, like we're going to give it out to the pools that will generate the most volume. And yeah, I mean, there's ways to game it, but I do think like the trade-offs are worth it because you end up with this system where like I'm holding Uni and I don't want to see Uni just being given out like indiscriminately from people that don't hold Uni. I want the Uni to have a say in where the Uni gets distributed, which you're trying to do now with the delegate model, which I think it's good, but there are complaints about like, being a Uniswap delegate. If you don't hold a lot of Uni yourself and you're a Uniswap delegate, the allocations that have been given out for Uniswap delegates is so high that a lot of people feel discouraged from voting. I see that like people feel discouraged from voting if they're not one of these like giant delegates, which I think is inversely.
Yeah. It's like voting for the president of the United States if you live in like Wyoming. Your vote's probably not going to do much either way, right? It's kind of already done.
Unless you get everyone. Yeah. I think if somebody, and I see the people that vote on the tally and the snapshot, and I think like whenever I see somebody that votes that isn't one of these massive delegates, it's like they deserve to be like exalted and like highlighted and showcased and whatever it is that they want, because if you're turning up to vote and that like there's all these big delegates that can like they do decide to vote because just for like the pure voting power. I think that also needs to be fixed over time, and there's some initiatives for that.
Yeah, like, let's talk about that. What would you suggest? How would you fix that?
Well, there's been some good suggestions already and some proposals on this. There's the Uniswap. I don't remember like the names, but like there's like the additional delegate program. There was a vote that they did, I think, at the end of 2023, which was to select a couple of more like DAOs and groups to give more delegations to. So like this is how 404 DAO got brought into the picture, which the 404 DAO is like a great group of guys that they participate a lot. So that was giving out more delegations. And so I think Uniswap should do more of that. And then Uniswap is also started to give out subsidies for delegates. So like delegates being able to get paid for the work that they do, because it's a lot of work, right? You're reviewing proposals, you're understanding them, like you're doing the votes, you're handling all of the discourse and the conversation, like you're showing up to the things, you're paying for the gas fees, like you're running the thing, right? Like there's a lot that goes into it. And for a lot of smaller delegates, right, like they can't compete with like the large firms that have enough funding to hire a full-time governance lead to just 24/7 be doing Uniswap governance, right? Like, so I think those initiatives are good, and we can do more in that direction to like help more people participate in governance.
Totally.
In your mind, is it really like helping distribute and helping some of the little guys being able to have more of an impact? Is that kind of summing it up there?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it is a really incredible opportunity, like this idea that you have this protocol that's worth billions, and that you as an individual can have a say in what happens. And this is one of the things that we pushed when we were setting up clubs, or like student delegates, is like, look, like you're a student and you can make a proposal that can affect how billions of dollars is like managed. And whether or not it passes, like putting that on your resume, like what,
Yeah.
that's an incredible thing as a student to put on your resume. And I think there are some students and some clubs that really hopped on that opportunity, and then you can see the effect, like they're there front and center, part of all these discussions.
Yeah.
Do you think quadratic voting would be a good play?
I think it could work. I think quadratic voting, I mean, there's also that issue, or I've seen quadratic voting, I've seen it not work out so well in some Gitcoin grants where you have like for-profit entities that have been able to get a lot of grants because they're very popular. And so they just like, get all of their people to vote on it. So I don't know. I've seen quadratic voting not work in some cases. Yeah, because it goes back down to the same issue. Like if you have enough funds to hire a big marketing studio or a marketing agency, or you have a full-time marketing team that is just messaging everybody 24/7 to go and vote for your Gitcoin grant, then you get even more funds. So I think there has to be some kind of like inverse thing. And Gitcoin is, I don't think they did that. I don't think they solved that with the quadratic grants. I think they solved that with the discovery mechanism on their site. So like they were surfacing lesser known grantees, and they were surfacing lesser known projects for people to, and they did the groups too, where you can like give to an entire group. And that way it was more like, a project that doesn't have all the marketing resources to be the most well-known thing could still get some of that, that grants. So, but they're the best example I've seen of like quadratic voting. I don't know. Have there been other?
Would you mind explaining to everybody what exactly quadratic voting is?
Quadratic voting is like, is more there's like a bucket. Well, in their specific example, like for Gitcoin, they have like a bucket of matched funds. And so you would vote on who should receive those funds, and you're voting with like your own funds, but there's like an inverse relationship. So like 10 people donating $1 was worth more than one person donating $10, right? But 2 people donating $5 is also worth more. You still do have a bigger say than each individual person. That
your relative voting power goes down as your bags go up.
Yeah,
so like
yes.
A big delegate would have less voting shares per capita than someone who's just an individual, like one person with a couple tokens. They would have a higher value per vote, essentially.
Yeah, per vote. Yeah, because they still have like a greater say, because you do still value like the amount, like the value of the dollars that are contributed, but it's not so much that, it's like you're giving an outsized, I don't know, that's the best way I can.
No, I appreciate you breaking that down. What's one thing you would change today about Uniswap governance if you could just snap your fingers?
I mean, I think, well, I don't know, because what I would change might make the whole system fail, right? Like that's
okay.
I understand.
Break it.
I would do the V33, because I think that's like the thing that would bring the most alignment between all the different like stakeholder groups, especially the Uni token holders. Like I think about the Uni token holders a lot, and like how those are the people that, they put their faith into Uniswap by buying the token, by participating in the governance. So that is the group that needs to be like the most like aligned with like the incentive. So I would do the V33, but if Uniswap has been thinking about this problem for a long time and with a lot of experts, and if they don't want to do that, then it could be for good reason that I'm not going to like interject. I'll just cast my vote when I see that proposal, if that proposal like ever comes through.
Would you ever put up that proposal?
I don't think I would, because I still consider myself as like I have areas where like I'm more knowledgeable about, and when it comes to something more like the tokenomics of like a uni token design, um, no, I'd like to see somebody else make that proposal, like maybe like as part of a group or a committee. But if I were to make that proposal, I'd want to consider like all the ways that it could go wrong. And I don't have a research firm that can like run all those simulations to like provide a very well thought out proposal that has taken into account all those risks. So, I'd like to see it come from somebody that has been able to put those resources to model everything out in all the different ways that it could go.
And do you think that voter escrow would have the capacity to be more impactful than just the fee switch, or do you think the fee switch is probably going to do the trick?
I think the fee switch would help a lot, because then the token will, even like a buyback and burn. Well, I guess that's what the fee switch is to buy back and burn, right?
Not necessarily. There's a lot of different conversations, and I guess the fee switch phrase is pretty generic, but the main hot topic is around sharing protocol revenue essentially with token holders. And that's the part that it starts to get into a little bit of a strange regulatory space. But I think that in and of itself is one way to obviously return value to the community. And then the other way would be to do a 3-3 model. That'd be pretty sweet. I would totally push for that, because yeah, obviously Aerodrome and Velodrome, they're fun. It's a fun game to play in DeFi. And it's obviously different, but it's a little bit easier to justify providing liquidity if you know that you're going to get a beta rate, for instance, in Aero tokens, right? So there is something to be said about that for sure.
Yeah, and I know these are like radical changes, but I think another one that is like more, I guess, approachable would be like nurturing these chain deployments more. So I know you and I, Joe, have had a lot of conversations about this, but I've seen that they'll deploy on a new chain, and then there may or may not be like follow-on support. Like the Celo one was just renewed for additional support through like a recent proposal, which I think is cool. There's the incentives now on Sonic, right? That I think is going to help like grow there. But I think it's not just about like giving those. It's not just about like giving incentives. It's about like marketing that this exists. Like, hey, there is a renewal on the incentive package on Celo. Like, let's feature Uniswap. Let's retweet. Let's grow the awareness for this. Not just that, but like get the projects that have tokens to list their tokens on Uniswap and provide their own incentives, right? And I haven't really seen much of that. Like, it's just kind of like the same pairs on each deployment for the most part, and then almost all the incentives comes from Uniswap, because the DAO votes on giving incentives from Uniswap. There needs to be more action on, okay, this Uniswap now exists on Scroll, it exists on Celo, it exists wherever. Go reach out to all the dApps that are on that chain and let them know that now there's Uniswap there. Go list your governance token, provide the liquidity and provide incentives, use Merkle or whatever you need to. Here are the tools that are available to that. I think we need to see more of that.
Yeah.
Do you think that the DAO would support using Uni to co-incentivize some of that liquidity provision on like a more of like a dApp and partnership level? Because right now, obviously, there's the onboarding package, and we just passed a proposal that allows for discretionary spending on certain incentives with high value opportunities on these one-off things. But do you think that, I really like the point you just made about you go to a new chain and then to actually go and infiltrate all those protocols and say, hey, come put your governance token, like you said, use some POL on Uni, and we will help incentivize that. Do you think that's something that the DAO would generally support?
Yeah, I think there could be more support for that. I think that if it was framed to them in a good way, because like on the Nibiru side, right, like we've been working with the Oku team to do all the Uniswap v3 contracts on Nibiru, and then after all those contracts are live, the next step is to get it canonized with the Uniswap DAO, And then, eventually, like, we want to get some TVL first, but then it would be to ask for an incentive package, which is like every other chain. But we're putting our own incentives. And then I'm like, every DApp that we talk to, I'm like, set up a pool on Uniswap, right? Set up a pool on Uniswap V3 on the Nibiru Chain, provide incentives, right? We're working with Merkle to get that set up. And then it's like, but I feel like, I'm doing this as the ecosystem lead of Nibiru. I'm advocating for Uniswap to every DApp I talk to. I don't feel like there's somebody on the Uniswap side that is like helping me do this. Like, it's Uniswap. Like, I'm helping Uniswap get more pools and pairs and TVL through all these different governance tokens and incentives that are being provided by dApps. Who is it on the Uniswap side that I should be talking to assist in this when they have like issues or when they have more questions? You, Joe, it's you.
Yeah. No, I love this idea.
But this is new, right? Like,
right,
what
right,
you've been doing, like, is you guys has pitched this, and so I think that's really great. And I mean, I guess, like, question for you, like, what have you seen change so far, and like, what are you guys planning to like keep working on to make this process happen more?
Yeah, big time. I'd say some of the main changes, the immediate gaps, kind of the triage, was bringing net new opportunities. So EVM chains that are not currently on Uniswap, and then we're even exploring some non-EVM deployments and things of that nature. But then on the back side of the pipeline, so once the chains are already onboarded and through the whole governance process, then we're working to negotiate the highest possible value in terms of incentives that we can deploy to the Uniswap community. And so we're working on actually distributing those incentives, marketing those available opportunities to show that people like, hey, there's this new chain that you can go and look, there's even boosted returns you can go take advantage of. And then beyond that, like you said, I think I actually just wrote that down because I think that's brilliant to work closely with with the actual, for instance, the BD of a new chain and say, okay, what are all the top tokens and all the top projects that we need to work with and help them bootstrap their first pools? Maybe we could even co-incentivize and do little special one-off programs if there's high value opportunity. But I think that's brilliant, and I'm definitely gonna push forward with that. Appreciate that advice, Eric.
Yeah, definitely. You got to find all the Ericks of all the different L1s and L2s because they're the ones thinking about this like 24/7. Is like where, and then if Uniswap doesn't do it, then fork will, right? That's the issue. That's time. That's the urgency here.
That's right. That's the alpha. So okay, give us the update on the Nibiru and Uniswap deployment. What's the status? What can you share with everybody, and what's exciting? What's coming?
I mean, it's very exciting. Like, the whole EVM rollout is coming soon. So we've been working with all the dApps to get them all onboarded. We've been making proposals on different like projects own governance portals. Like we did a proposal recently for Abracadabra to get MIMSwap on our chain. And so it's interesting because it's been a mix where some projects you go through the public governance process. Some of them is like you talk with the team and then you just kind of make a partnership and then get to work on that deployment. We have Astroval on the WASM side of things because Nibiru has multiple VMs. We have EVM and we have WASM. Right. So we have some dApps live in WASM now. The EVM side is not live yet, so that's where the mainnet will come out soon, and then we'll have all those dApps ready for like a big campaign and a big push that we want to do.
Very exciting. What's the timeline on Uniswap being live?
I mean, we'd like Uniswap. Uniswap will likely be live like on day one when we do like our mainnet campaign. Like, they're part of the initial group. And
is there a date yet?
No, there's no date for that yet.
Okay. Are we talking weeks? Are we talking months? How close are we here?
I mean, it's more weeks than months. Like, we definitely want to do it this quarter, but like that all depends.
Okay. All right. Well, I want us to jump into a little rapid fire section, and then we can close out. This is great to have you on, man. But okay, ready for some rapid fire? Maybe Austin and I can ping pong back and forth here. First question: Bitcoin or ETH?
Bitcoin.
Telegram or Discord?
Telegram.
L2s or alternative L1s?
Alternative L1s. Wait, I want to let me elaborate. Okay, Bitcoin is forever. Bitcoin has been forever. Like Bitcoin is the only thing that like I will tell any normal person to buy because it's the only thing that I know will work. You know, anything else is up in the air. Telegram, Discord is like for games. It's weird to mix like the gaming with the. I'll be like playing a game and it'll just tell everybody like in the Discord that I'm playing this game. Like keep it separate. What was the third one?
L2s or all L1s?
Oh yeah, all L1s because I think the token model makes more sense when you have validators. You know, I like optimism. I've Jing was the one that got me into crypto when we were at the MIT Bitcoin Club, and then she was the president of Blockchain Education Network before me. So I really like optimism a lot. But I just worry about like the use case being purely governance. Like I think value accrual is very important for tokens and for a lot of L2s because their security comes from ETH. It's good from a security perspective, but then why do they have their own tokens? Like it's a challenge to like figure out. So all L1s is their own consensus mechanism or their own security model, like their own validator set. Maybe it's less secure from like a pure economic standpoint, but is more aligned the ecosystem.
Mm. What about most overrated token?
Besides Ripple.
Besides Ripple. All the meme coins. I don't like meme coins. I skipped the whole meme coin thing. I stuck with DeFi.
Costco hot dog. Come on, you have to have one meme coin that you've participated in and had some fun with.
The only meme coin I participated in was Doge, which I was mining in 2015 in my frat. That we had like all these like Dogecoin miners like running, and it made like the whole apartment building like super hot. So that was about it. Then I did Turbo, which was like they made it with like ChatGPT last year, or like in 2023 they made that.
Yeah.
I tried. I mean, like I bought like the chill guy and like all those like memes, and it was okay. Like
you're too deep in the zeitgeist to waste time with memes.
I'm not good at it. Like I'm too afraid that like if the value goes, if okay, I'll olive branch to the meme coin guys. Like if utility coin goes down, I can at least psyops myself that there's like a reason and like there's a use case for it that like maybe it'll go back up. But if a meme coin goes down, then it's like, oh, what if people actually just moved on? Like, what if no one is ever going to say the words "mudang" again? Or like, so I don't know. It's not for me. It's too scary when like the price is down because I don't have like a strong reason to believe that like it will come back up.
Hot wallet or cold wallet?
Cold wallets. Yeah, keep stuff in cold wallets. Hot wallets are kind of how we get everything done. So you need them a lot. But I've been pushing more stuff to cold wallets as of late, and then kind of splitting up my security there.
Smart man.
Okay, what about the next hot narrative?
Like besides AI, AI has been hot. AI has been hot. DeSci. I think DeSci because if like you could have AI in DeSci that you could have like AI agents like analyzing like scientific papers and then producing like interesting results there. DeSci makes sense from like a crowdfunding perspective where you raise these funds to invest in research and to get more like research done. And then we kind of had some examples where like people like launch meme coins to raise funding for different like scientific oriented projects. And it's not like the main thing, but it was also kind of already like we had like a little bit of it, which you notice that like we always have like a little bit of the next thing in the previous during the current meta. Before, like we had a little bit of AI last year, right? Like there were like AI based projects, like the virtuals has been around for a while actually. So like it's interesting to see them kind of resurface. So yeah, DeSci. I would say DeSci.
That is a unique use case for sure. I've not heard like launch a meme coin to raise funds for something actually meaningful. It's kind of neat. I definitely support that. All the other stuff, I don't know. I'm still on the fence.
You just need the rails. You need the rails.
Give us some alpha. What's a project that doesn't have enough hype? Besides Nibi.
I'll say a couple so that I don't seem like I'm just chill. I don't want to be perceived as like someone chilling.
Bring it on.
I like the Soling agent, which is a bot that like was created by this dev at Anthropic. This this agent is going through GitHubs and is writing up reports on how those, like how those projects are. So they just were a part of I think the Solana hackathon, the Sendai AI hackathon, and they went through all the submissions and they gave their thoughts on their own assessment on the projects and how good they are, like from a technical perspective, novelty perspective. I'm like, oh yeah, this is really cool because it's not just like reply guying like on Twitter, but it's actually reading GitHubs, it's spinning out analysis, and it's like sharing like what it's learned. And then people can use that information, right? For like, oh, do I want to buy the token of this hackathon project? Do I want to invest in their team? Do I want to join their team? Like that's very useful information, right? Like, especially for people that can't just parse through GitHubs on their own.
I feel like it's kind of opening up the world to the startup in a way, signaling to it. Okay. One more question. If you had one wish for Uniswap DAO in the next 12 months, what would it be? And who would need to step up to make it happen?
I would really like to see the fee switch. Yeah, the fee switch. I think that is the number one thing, or some form of like the value accrual to the token. And because I know there's a lot of like regulatory issues and legal issues, then I think it has to come from Uniswap Labs. Like somebody at Uniswap Labs has to champion for this, because the DAO and the foundation can do a lot for deployments and incentives, and then the grants and the treasury management, and then the protocol own liquidity and all that. But when it comes to the actual there's this relationship between the token, Uniswap Labs, and now everything with Unichain. I do think that like we can make this work, but having labs be more involved and like provide like a clear direction and be helpful in that regard, I think would make this a lot easier to do and to like execute on.
It's a tall order, but I think it's maybe someday. They like to stay separate for sure, but thankfully with enough delegates, I think a lot can happen, a lot can get done.
Yeah, it would be ideal, but like, I mean, if not, then there's other things that we can do, right? Like this, what we were discussing about the chain deployments, and then the like getting other projects to put their own incentives to like help grow TVL without it coming all from like uni token emissions, like that kind of stuff.
Right. Where can people best follow you besides Spotify?
They can follow me on Twitter.
Are you most active on Twitter?
Yeah, I'm most active on Twitter. I try to post most of my stuff on Twitter. And then we have the Nibiru Chain Twitter for like all the updates with Nibiru. And you'll see the Uniswap deployment once that's ready, as well as like all of the other campaigns and programs that we're doing.
Beautiful. Erick, it was an absolute pleasure as always. Really appreciate you coming on today, and fun conversation. Please come back someday, and we hopefully will have the fee switch on and a lot more new exciting things to talk about.
All right. Thank you guys.
Thanks, Erick.
Thanks, Erick.
Thanks everybody for joining. This is the Ungovernable Podcast. We will see you next week.
This was the Ungovernable Podcast by Alpha Growth. Watch all our episodes on YouTube or Spotify or weekly live on X.